Okay, we are recording now. Let me just make sure that it's connecting to the video on Facebook. We are now on Facebook. We're good there. I'm checking LinkedIn real quick. We are live on LinkedIn. We're good. And we should be live on YouTube. Just bear with me. Almost there. Connecting streaming software. And we are now live on YouTube. Perfect. Okay, so thanks for being patient, everybody. If you see me looking to the left, it's because I've got dual monitors and I'm running two different screens at the same time. So there's certain questions that I wanted to ask Maria. There are questions that I think will help anybody on their real estate journey. I'm really, really lucky because she's super busy. I caught her in between meetings. She was actually on a few other Zoom meetings with some of her other clients and potential acquisitions that she's going to be purchasing. So she took time out of her busy schedule to be able to share her wealth of knowledge with us. And if you're just logging in, what we are going to be talking about today is how to purchase real estate without any banks. So without a bank loan, without filling out a credit check, without filling out a loan application, without having to do any of that stuff. And Maria has been very, very successful at doing this. And she is based out of Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta, Georgia. That's right, Paul.
Perfect. She's based out of Atlanta, Georgia, and I was lucky enough to meet her through some of the other community groups. In particular, I think it may have been the Sub 2 community group, and that's where we got to know each other. And we just recently closed a doozy of a deal that took us months to close, but we got it to the finish line. We did it as a team, and we did it together. So before we dive into the details, there were some questions, and I do this in all of our interviews, and I do this in all of our podcasts that I sent to her just so that we could cover. And I think that they're good questions because they're going to help you out in your business as well. So, Maria, is it cool if I dive right in?
Yeah, let's do it. And I really appreciate you, Paul, for taking the opportunity to get on here with me as well. So thank you.
Team effort, total team effort.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what are 1 to 3 books that have influenced you in your business that you may have read? They can be audiobooks, they can be books that you give out as gifts, but 1 to 3 books that you personally recommend that anybody that works with you or on your team that you suggest that they read.
Yeah, so the number one book that I got actually a couple years ago would be The Go-Giver. Really doesn't really have much to do with business at all or real estate or whatever we do as a money-making activity. It's more of a book that allows you to really understand how to be as a person, as a human being, how to live through values. So The Go-Giver is probably my number one recommendation. It talks about different scenarios, but also makes you see the bigger picture, right? At the end of the day, whatever you do it with heart, you do it giving without expecting anything in return. And as long as you are a go-giver and always wanting to give instead of just receive, you'll be able to do a lot in life and be able to have tons of success. Number 2 book I would say is Traction. Traction is a great book. I know a lot of people in real estate read it, a lot of entrepreneurs. It just gives them the ability to really stay focused on organization, especially time-wise, which is a huge killer. You still hear me, Paul?
Oh, yeah. I'm taking some notes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, Traction would be a number 2 book, especially when you feel like you're all over the place. You feel like you need a plan as far as who you are internally to be able to organize yourself and organize your business. So that would be number 2. Number 3 would be $1 Million Habits. That's an amazing book. I would say it really just dives into how people think usually and how they should be thinking. And I want to make sure that's what it is. I have my dual screen here. I think it's not $1 Million Habits, it's $1 Billion Habits.
$1 Million Habits?
It's $1 Million. Yeah, I was right. $1 Million Habits by Brian Tracy. Phenomenal book. So it really just gives you like best practices on how to look at things. I mean, from the everyday thing that you see to the bigger things in life, like cars, houses, and things of that nature. So really good book and really helps you dig deep into habits that you should be having. So those would be my top 3 there.
Awesome. All right. If you guys see me look down at my screen or you see me typing things, it's just me taking notes. You're going to have to forgive me for that. I don't want anybody to think that I'm not listening to what Maria's sharing. Number two, what purchase of $100 or less has positively impacted your life over the last 6 months? $100 or less purchase that has positively impacted you.
Yeah. So I was gonna say something along the lines of a book or a notebook that, really allows me to jot down things, but I actually want to take technology into the factor a little bit. And I feel like in order for us to be very progressive and be able to, look at things and use our time wisely or the most efficiently, I recently started doing the dual monitor, right? And at first I was like, well, do I connect this monitor to the computer and then this computer to that? And I learned through YouTube and through Google that there's a thing called a dock, right? And I don't know if a lot of people might not know. Some people are not very tech savvy like others. But a dock is essentially a little machine, a little thing like this big that costs like 60, 70 bucks. I bought it. And what it allows you to do is connect everything together. It's like a connect hub. And I'm
Yeah.
sure, Paul, I'm sure you have one. But I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
I didn't know, and it's really been huge for me because now I could do multiple things on different screens. I could plug in different devices from one place,
Sure.
and it's really accelerated me as far as my work production and what I can do in a small period of time. So that would be my suggestion or
Yeah. And that's
my
awesome because it's something so small that you wouldn't realize that it's that simple. I just recently had something happen to me over the weekend where we have these Google cams, the Nest cams, throughout one of our Airbnbs, and the Wi-Fi went out, and we had to reset the IP. And I don't want to get technical, but I couldn't reconnect the camera to the new Wi-Fi IP, and I spent hours trying to figure this thing out, and then finally gave up in the evening. And then the next morning, I woke up and just decided to call Google Tech Support, and it turns out that all I had to do was hold the reset button and have it reset not once but twice, and it was something as simple as that. And shame on me for wasting like 3 or 4 hours the night before trying to figure it out on my own when I could have just called them anyway. What you just described is exactly what a lot of us do. It's something so simple, and it's a $60 purchase. But you're right; it makes a difference. So I'm glad that you share
yeah,
that because there are people that need to hear about
yeah.
that. Okay. What's an apparent or what others might perceive as a failure that has helped you pave the way for your success?
Yeah, so I would say on a daily that we have to take failure. It's necessary to fail, and I would take it failure as going through 100 calls in one day and not getting absolutely anywhere,
Hmm.
not getting a yes, not getting a yeah, like, oh, I'd be interested, or yeah, I want to talk to you. Just going through that day of going through 100 calls and not getting absolutely anywhere. I think that failure has to be embraced, and that's hard to answer as a question because you might want to point out one specific thing, but I feel like failure is a daily basis. Like you have to do failure every day to get to where you want to go. And you almost have to look as failure as not a failure. You have to
Right.
look at it as, just another part of the process, right? And you almost want to expect those 100 calls with getting nothing in return so that you could go do it again tomorrow and you could go do another 100 calls and just expect that you're not going to get anything, and that's a failure. I mean, people count it as a failure. I mean, people will start a business and they'll go through 100 days of not selling one thing on their shelf, right? And then they're like, well, I failed at this. I'm a
Right.
failure. I failed at that. Maybe I'm not meant to sell cupcakes because I went through 100 days and I didn't sell one cupcake, and they'll consider it a failure. And it depends on your attitude because some people might look at it and say, well, maybe I should change the way I bake the cupcakes. Or maybe I should change the presentation of the cupcakes. Maybe I should change the way that my storefront looks, right? And so you got to take failure as a lesson and not like what it is. And it's a condescending word. It's a word that people don't like to say or use.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you have to get used to it. You have to get used to the word. You have to get used to the process and those down days, those days that you had no traction. You have to get through them in order to get where you want to go. So I would say that would be the answer to the question. You always have to fail.
Yeah. So what keeps you going after those days of, going through, you keep using the 100, and I'm glad that you're doing that, but you use the 100 calls as an example without seeing any results. What gets you out of bed the next morning to go back and do it again after, before?
I would say, and I follow Pace Morby a lot. That's kind of the guy in the creative world, but he says that you have to find the bunnies, right? And what finding the bunny is finding that one person that needed you to call them, right? That one person. And Paul, I know that Monique, or the one who we just did the
Yeah.
deal with. She was that bunny for you. She was waiting on that one person to come and help her out in that situation. Had you not made that call, had you not connected with her, she would be in a worse position she is today, right? So it's just about that. I mean, what makes you want to do it all over again? Just to see if out of those 100 calls, one of these days, you're going to come across something that's just it's going to make you feel good internally. It doesn't even have to be about the money. Maybe sometimes you help someone and they give you a quote or they say something to you that you're just like mind blown. You just internalize it, and you tell yourself, this is the reason why I make calls. Right? Or this is the reason why I get up in the morning. Right? And now, of course, everyone has their kids, has their families, has bills to pay. That's normal. Everyone
Right.
does. Whether
Yeah.
you're in a W-2 job, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. It's normal to have kids and have family and have a wife and have a baby to say, well, I have to do this for them. Yeah, true, but you also have to do it for other people that have nothing to do with you.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
that's what I would say.
Awesome answer. Okay. If you could have a massive billboard anywhere in the world, what would it say about you, or what would the billboard say?
Yeah, I would go. That one was a hard one for me to kind of articulate, because it's like a part of me, the business and entrepreneur side of me, wanted me to sell something on that billboard, right? Like, call me, need help with real estate, whatever, call me. But I feel like in this competitive world that we're in, right, where anyone could be watching anyone, you have to be so different to what you do and what you give, to be able to really, withstand and keep going, right? Withstand and have, a good amount of success, we
Sure.
would say.
Yeah.
So you have to be different. And so I would just do like a black billboard, and I would do white letters. And I saw this in a neighborhood somewhere, where they did a big propaganda. I don't even know where it came from, but it said, "It will be okay." Have you seen it?
No.
I
No.
don't know. I've seen it a lot where it's just like a white banner, and in black letters it says, "It will be okay." Right? So I would do something like that. I would just say, "It will be okay, and if not, call me and my number."
That's awesome. Cool.
So they'll call me, and
Yeah. Yeah.
they don't even know what I'm selling yet, but
Right.
something like
It'll all
that.
work out in the end. Yeah. It will be
Yeah, it will
okay.
all
That's
work
awesome.
out. Yeah. So that would what I would do.
Okay. Quotes that you live by, or a quote that you live by.
Ah, um, I mean, so many, so many, so many, but uh, that's hard. Um, I would say, you know, uh, just just something around value. I don't know. I'm not a big quote person.
Cool.
I love to read stuff, but I don't know. Help me on this one, Paul. You give me one that you'd like to live
One
by.
that I like, I just said it a little while ago. My favorite one is "This too shall pass." You
This
just
too
hang
shall
on,
pass.
just hang on,
Yeah.
just hang on long enough. Everything.
Yeah, I would say something like always be giving,
Yeah,
or
awesome.
always be giving value, or give value first. Just something very simple, but just to keep it at the top of mind that, just go out there and find someone to share something with. That would be
Perfect.
something like that. Yeah.
All right. Now it's we've been at this for a little bit, so I'll tell you what. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes. So,
Yeah.
as I mentioned earlier to everybody, what we're going to be talking about is how to purchase properties without using a bank, without having to get a bank loan, without having to pull a credit check, and without having to fill out a loan application. So, really, what we're talking about is creative financing. And I know that Maria is an expert at this now, and she's purchased many properties using this exact same strategy. So, Maria, why don't you just explain how you learned that strategy, how you've applied that strategy, and then maybe we'll go into the deal that we just
Yeah.
successfully closed.
Yeah, Paul. So, I've been in real estate for a bit now, since around 2018. And I say a while because some people, they like to get in real estate for like a year and they quit. I know, Paul, you've been at it for a long time too. But they try it, they're like a year or two in, and being in real estate could be different things, right? But one thing I'm talking about specifically is wealth building in real estate, right? Because you could be in real estate as an agent, which is more of a career, right? It's more of a business that you build to do sales, maybe, right?
Yeah.
But I'm talking about wealth building, so I'm talking about owning assets and keeping them, right? So that's essentially what I mean by in real estate, and investing time and effort into building wealth. So, as far as I've seen a little bit of everything, I've done a little bit of everything, gone to multiple conferences, and one that specifically struck out to me is that what you just said. How do I purchase without getting banks involved? Because I was actually in banking for 10 years. And I know the ins and outs of banking probably more than most people. And I know that banking has limitations. I would put it that way, right? Like it's something that you need, but they have their way of wanting to process things. They have their way of wanting to do things, and they have limitations on people. Like if you have a bad credit score, you just can't get approved, right? If you don't have money saved up, like you just can't make it work. So I know that banking part, and so when I heard about creative finance or being able to keep essentially banks away from it, I was mind blown, right? I was like, well, this is a great way to get into real estate without having to have limitations. Just put it that way.
Right.
There's no limitations in creative finance. And what that means is that you can go purchase and buy as many properties as you want, as long as you find those people who need you, right? And as long as you find people that are willing to work with you and work on the way that you want to purchase and the way that they want to sell. What that means. So I ran across Pace Morby, which is the huge creative guy, online, and I just got hooked, right? And so I joined Sub 2, which is the community that he has. There's two communities, but one is a private community, which is the one I'm part of. And it allows you, so creative finance allows you to structure things directly with the seller in a win-win scenario. That's essentially the way I like to see it, right? In what way can I solve your problem, and what do you need to solve that problem, and how can we make it work together without involving anyone else? No banks, no credit scores, no financials, just directly you and me. I'm a human being, you're a human being. How can we make this work? This is what I want, right? I want to purchase this house, and most of the time I tell the sellers, or I tell the person I'm working with, I'm going to turn around and do this, this, or that, right? I'm upfront, I'm honest, I'm transparent, because the more that they know, the more that they understand why I'm asking the questions I'm asking, why I'm wanting to go this certain route. So just be, honest and transparent. So I'll tell them, well, I'm going to turn around and lease option this property, right? I'm going to give this property to someone who doesn't have the opportunity to buy with a loan right now. And I want to help them get there, right? So I'll turn around and lease option it. Or I'll turn around and do a pad split, right? Which is giving affordability. Pad split, that's what it is, right? It's giving affordability to those people that can't afford to live anywhere because
Right.
of the rent rate. So it allows them to come in and say, well, I just want to rent a room because that's all I need. I'm a single person. I just really need a room and I just really can pay, I don't know, 600, 700 bucks a month, right? So that I'm giving affordability to those people that need that specific product, right? And I'm not, I'm not going to them and saying, you're not the expert, I'm the expert. I'm not going to them that way, right? I'm going to them as, this is kind of what I want to do. Now, how can we work together to make that work where you're looking to sell your property, I'm looking to purchase it. How can we make it work together, right? And it is I would say it's a more challenging process, right, than
Okay.
just buying cash or buying with a
Oh
loan.
yeah,
It,
100%.
it, it is a lot more challenging, but why? Because there's more emotions involved, right? Because this person has maybe doubts of what you're doing, or doubts because it's not a common practice, right? And so there's a lot more challenges in that process, but it also can be very beneficial to both the person on the other side and the person on this side, right? So I
Let's
would say,
go. Let's talk about your very first one, the very first deal that you did. So, number one, how did you find out about the deal, or how did you find the seller?
yeah. So this was a partner of mine. So I have a JV partner of
Mhm.
mine at that time. This was back in 2018,
So your first
and
one was
he was
around
a
2018.
yes, but I didn't
Okay.
know it was a creative. I didn't know it was creative.
But for the
I
people
know.
that are, and I'm not trying to cut you off, but the people that are, so when we talk, we use these acronyms, and like we understand them. But for the person who's listening, who's this is brand new to them, they may not understand. So a JV, I'll let you tell what a JV
Oh,
is.
yes.
Go ahead. What is a
It's
JV?
a yeah, it's a joint venture. So it's working together with someone like me and Paul. Let's say we work together and we do we do an investment together. That's a JV, joint
Right.
venture, partnership. That's kind of what it is. So thank you
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
for pausing me there, Paul. Okay, so I had a JV partner at that time. We were both going out and looking for homes. So we're door knocking, right, trying to help sellers and foreclosures and stuff like that. That's kind of we were more accountability buddies, you could
Got
say.
it.
And he drove Uber at the time. I was in banking. He drove Uber. And in the Uber, he would always tell people, "Oh, I'm in real estate. I'm looking to buy. I'm looking to buy. I'm in real estate." And he was consistent with it. Yes, he was driving for Uber, but he was also telling the world what he wanted,
That
right?
is cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So in one of his rides, is a guy, a young guy, who says, "Oh, really? I have an inherited property, right? My grandparents passed away. They left it to me. It's paid off, but I need some cash. Like I need some money to invest in other things. So I want to essentially, get out of it,
Sure.
right?" And then, one of the first things you ask, because this is always like the question to go to, is like, okay, why don't you list it? Or why don't you put it on the market? Right? If you're trying, usually most sellers, if they're looking to sell a property, they're going to go to the market, they're going to go to an agent, and they're going to go the traditional route, right?
Sure.
And then he's like, well, I have a tenant in there. I have someone living in there, and he's a really close friend of mine, and I don't want to kick him out. And I know if I sell in the market, most likely it's going to be a family that buys it, or it's going to be someone that buys it, and they're going to want to live in it, right? And so I'm like, okay, well, that's a perfect scenario for an investor to buy a property, right?
Sure.
Because we're not talking about the fact that I'm going to go live in the property. We're going to talk about it. Let's buy it as an investment, right? And so we ended up having a purchase price, and this is back before the prices skyrocketed. We had a purchase price at 100,000, right? It was like an hour away from Atlanta, so it was a little rural town. We had a purchase, and so what happens is he technically couldn't. He didn't want to sell it all cash because he said he was bad managing money. So he would rather get it in payments, but, basically get paid out in maybe 2 or 3 years. And we were like, okay, so how much down do you want? And he was like, well, I could take like 20,000, right? So 20,000 is what he wanted. And then what we did was we went to the tenant that was there and asked him, does he eventually want to buy this property? Like, would he want to stay in it? He said, absolutely. And I said, okay, well, we're not going to kick you out. We're going to keep you here, but we would want to do a lease option with you. A lease option is an option to buy. It's a contract that's just not a regular rental agreement. It gives the ability for that person to have an option to buy the property from you
Right.
for a certain period of time. He gave us a $5,000 option fee.
That's awesome.
So we were in it 15,000, right?
Right.
7,500, my partner 7,500, me 7,500, right? Because we were JV.
And,
We were joint venture.
and the tenant gave 5,000 for the option to purchase the home down the road,
Correct.
and the seller wanted to get cashed out in 2 to 3 years.
Correct. So
Okay.
that's why we did a lease option.
Yeah.
Because it's like, perfect. We're going to actually have the tenant cash you out, right? So then we fast forward, and unfortunately, COVID happened a couple of
Right.
years later. And so the tenant was actually not able to, refinance or not refinance, but purchase the
Purchase it,
property
sure.
because he lost his job and everything. And he was amicable. He said, you know what, maybe this, he was an older gentleman too. He was like, maybe this is a sign. I just have to go and live with family. So what we ended up doing is putting it on the market because we had to pay him out. And we made like 80 grand.
How much did you guys purchase it for again? Was it 100?
100, and we sold it for 185.
That's awesome. And remember, you still got the $5,000.
Yeah, and whatever we paid like $750 a month to the original seller, and we were charging him like $1,250. So we were making like $500.
So you were cash flowing. Yeah, if that isn't a creative deal, I don't know what is. And all of this was done without a bank.
Yeah,
So,
all without a bank.
That's pretty awesome. So just to recap, you had a partner driving for Uber, and what he was doing was talking to every guest that he had in his car, saying that he wants to buy real estate. He's looking to purchase real estate. He gets one. One says, I inherited a property. I want to sell it. You guys purchase it for 100. It's tenant occupied. You give the tenant the option to buy, and you're charging him a lease of $1,200, and the monthly payment to the seller is $750. That's what you negotiated. So I'm doing this because I want everybody to understand what excellent negotiation skills Maria has. Trust me, I know. We just did a deal together. And so she negotiated all of this. She negotiated the price. She negotiated the monthly payment to the seller, and she negotiated a higher rental amount to the tenant. So she was cash flowing, and in 2 or 3 years later, she ends up selling it for $185,000, $85,000 profit. Amazing. That's a great example. That's a great example.
Yes. So there's so many though, but not to get too confused with what it is. At the end of the day, you're listening. You're listening, and you're acting based on what you're hearing.
Sure.
Right? So we heard the seller was bad with money. We obviously proposed the fact of paying him in payments and in 2 years cashing out, right? Well, he wanted that, right? Sometimes you're going to go back and forth with what they want. So if that's what they want and you're like, well, that's fine because I will owe less. The property value is here, I would owe here, so I still have equity. So there's a lot you could do. I didn't have to sell. We could have refinanced
Yeah,
him out.
exactly.
So, but it made more sense to sell because my partner had left to South Carolina. He was no longer in Georgia, and it was a property that was far from me, so it made more sense. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is listen and act based on what you're hearing. I heard he has a tenant. I heard he doesn't want to get kicked out. Well, as someone buying the property, once the property is yours, you really can do whatever you want. So even if you keep the tenant, you can give them 60 days and they have to vacate. So we went to the tenant and said, we want to keep you here. Matter of fact, we want you to buy the property. You know, is that something you want to do?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And educate him and prepare him and do everything. Unfortunately, COVID happened, but either way, I mean, you educate and you do based on whatever you feel like is best for everyone.
Yeah, that's an awesome example. Okay, so that was a seller finance.
Seller finance.
Yeah, complete seller finance. And then your exit strategy, and that was another thing. I don't know if you guys caught that, but she talked about this. Maria talked about this earlier about having multiple exit strategies or multiple different ways to exit the transaction, right? And in this case, her exit strategy was a lease option to buy, which didn't happen. So her next alternative exit strategy was to then list it, put it on the market. Were you the agent when you listed it? Were you licensed? Yeah. Maria's also a licensed real estate agent or broker over there in Atlanta.
Agent,
agent. And look, the truth is, you don't necessarily have to be licensed to be able to do what she did when she acquired it, but it made more sense for her to sell it herself as an agent because then she wouldn't have to pay a commission to another real estate agent listing it herself. So, yeah, bravo on that one. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the one that you and I just did. We worked together on this one. This one is a subject to deal, and only to protect the seller's privacy. I'm not going to go too much into the detail, but there were multiple liens on this property, multiple liens, and in particular, there was one company, a real estate company, and we won't go into names, but they were going out there and convincing sellers to list their properties, and then if the seller didn't sell their property, they were placing liens on sellers' homes, and that company has been doing this nationwide. Anyway, long story short, that was one lien. Then there was the mortgage, which is considered a lien. Then there was a forbearance loan, right? That was considered another lien. So that was three. Then we had an HOA lien that was also on the property. So all in all, we had four different liens, and I had to negotiate with all four of those liens. And one of the loans was sold from one bank to another bank to another bank. And so the paper trail of figuring out where the hell all these loans were was a complete nightmare. And what happened was I then put it, I basically said, look, we've got a creative subject to deal here where a seller is willing to sell the property to someone, subject to, it had a 2.85% mortgage, I think, or something like that.
2.75.
2.75. And the balance on the loan was about 160, and I'm just giving out rough numbers, 160. Ended up selling it. Maria actually took on the project. Final purchase price was about 190,000. I don't know, Maria, what your estimate of repairs on this?
About 35.
$35,000 to repair it, fix it up. I think it's a good pad split property. I think I did some numbers. I'm thinking, can't you rent each of the bedrooms out for about $800 there?
Yeah, because it's super close to the airport. It's in a really good location, and it's in a growing. I mean, you did a smart investment when you have multiple ways you can do this.
Yeah.
When you have multiple ways that you can take a property, I mean, I could do a lease option there because the payment is low. I could do a wrap, right, to find another buyer for it. I could do pad split, which is what Paul stated. I could even sell it, just fix it and sell it too. I mean,
yeah. Inventory's low still.
Yeah,
so,
inventory's low. Exactly, that's why.
So Maria purchased it as a subject to hybrid, meaning she took over the payments. She took over the payments for the loan. I was able to negotiate some of these liens down. And it took us, what really should have been about a month and a half transaction ended up taking us like 3 or 4 months. It took really, really long, much longer than it should have. But we got it to the finish line. So she takes over the loan. and all the liens are paid off. So based on the payment that Maria made, then there was an assignment fee that was included, and then now she gets to manage the property. But when asked, okay, so how did I find this seller? This one, believe it or not, was a little bit of PPC. And again, I use a lot of acronyms, so I don't want people getting confused by the acronyms. If you don't know what PPC is, it's pay-per-click ads. So this was a pay-per-click ad. The seller clicked on it, entered her information, and basically said, yeah, I just want to sell the property. I don't want to deal with this anymore. And that was what started the conversation. I knew immediately that because of the repairs and the lack of equity, we weren't going to be able to do an all-cash deal, so we structured it creative. So in this case, no banks, no applications, no nothing. Maria reached out to me and she said, hey, I'd like to do this deal with you. And we started working on the numbers. And that was it.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, and it allows you to be more friendly with the seller too. Because in an all cash transaction, all they do is get lowballed. They know that. Everyone knows that, right? Even if I go and want to buy something cash at a car dealership, I'm going to say, well, how much would you sell this to me if I paid cash, right? And that's what's happening with a lot of sellers. So whenever a seller, goes that route, they usually get the short end of the stick. And that's just, it is what it is, right? So a lot of times if they already don't have equity, they either have to bring money to get rid of the property, or they have to walk away with very, very little, which in these days, very, very little money to walk away is really hard, because you have moving expenses, you have all these things that you have to figure out afterwards. So being able to do a creative deal really helps that person who's in a bad situation or tight situation to get a little bit more breathing room, get a little bit more options, and to possibly make more money too.
Yeah, absolutely. So in your opinion then, using the creative financing deal, the sellers are getting a higher price, right?
I agree. Yeah, 100%.
And what are some of the other strategies that you're using to find these motivated sellers that would be open to some type of creative financing?
Yeah, so a lot of the times the term wholesaler, or the term, those that are buying properties cash, what's going on is they're only sticking to looking at properties for cash, right? So if it doesn't make sense for them, a lot of times they might have a situation where, like, this particular situation, the seller doesn't have equity. So I'm connecting with them and saying, hey, if you have these certain situations, let me know. Maybe I can help structure something. And that way, other agents as well that know I've bought subject to with agents involved. And they've become my friends. Now they call me if they have a listing, or if they have actually one of them was a Mark Spain guy. And, they do a lot of volume. So he'll call me from time to time and say, hey, I have this situation. What do you think? Or this and that. So it's just letting people know as far as what you do, how you can help, and really just trying to present those, those options.
Okay, so and I'm glad you bring that up, because that's something that a lot of people are talking about right now, which is approaching real estate agents with creative finance. So how are you now? We're both licensed, so we understand it, and we're open to the possibility, and we can present that possibility to other sellers, and we can do that all day. But a lot of agents who aren't as well versed in it, they tend to shy away, or they don't even want to hear about the possibility of some type of creative finance. So how are you pitching it to the agents, or how are you getting them to explain it correctly to their client?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a very specific niche. We want to make sure that we're aware of that, right? So, like, for example, if it's a listing that's been on the market for 90 plus days, we want to, come to the fact of, well, I'm looking to help, right? I'm looking to see how you can get this sold. I definitely don't want it to be another expired listing for you, and how can we make it work? What's the seller situation, right?
Right.
And then that usually leads to one or two things. Either the seller situation is no equity, so they can't really reduce price, or the other situation was the property is not selling because it's cosmetically it doesn't look good, it's not appealing, and they still want too much money for it, right? But if they do have equity, right, or if it's almost, or it's completely paid off, it's also a creative finance, option,
Right.
but just a seller finance option instead of the other one. What I would say is whenever you are targeting agents, be very mindful that the money that you're bringing to the table has to be enough to cover something for them. Maybe it might not be their full commission, but it's going to be something for them. So you have to make sure you keep that in the back of the mind. And there's some people who are approaching these sort of situations to then find a buyer for, kind of like our situation, right, Paul? But of course, you would find a buyer because you're not even here. So, it just makes more sense. But if you are, looking for these deals to find another buyer that's going to actually keep it, be mindful of, everything that goes into what they're going to bring to the table, the property conditions, and, make sure that you're always in that ability to negotiate. As far as what you're telling the agent is, again, you're looking to help, you're looking at providing other options, be very honest and upfront. I do a lot of creative transactions, and I feel like this particular situation would be a good creative transaction. And then feel free to, get someone that's experienced involved if you're not experienced. And that way, they can help you walk through like what that conversation would look like. I always look for like either a Zoom or in-person meeting, right? If it's out of state, then Zoom. If it's here, I'll try to go and meet that agent in person or propose a Zoom call with the seller, right? Which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, because
Sure.
sometimes they feel like, oh, well, I don't want to make it seem like I don't know what I'm doing,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, but just propose different options to them, and just have a conversation. That's all you're doing, really. Just having a conversation, trying to figure it out. And if it's not a fit, don't push it. Like don't force it, because then you're gonna give them a sour taste, right? As far as, oh, like they're just looking to do something illegal or anything like that. No, just have a conversation, educate them, and then go from there.
So, what has been your, like, when you have these conversations with the agents, what are some of the responses that you're getting? Like, what are some of the objections that you're getting, and how are you overcoming those objections with relation to creative finance? And look, every time we hit, we're not going to get a home run, right? We already know
Right.
that. So that's
Right.
just part of what we do. But like, what are the objections that you're getting, and how are you overcoming those objections?
Yeah, so some objections are going to be valid objections in the fact that you can't really help or make it work because, like, for example, one objection is, well, they have to sell this house to buy another one, right?
Okay.
And you already know at that point that if that's what they need, then they have to sell it traditionally and they have to get cash at closing for their price to be able to take that money and purchase something else, right? So
Right.
you have to really listen to what the situation is. So that might be an objection. Another objection might be, well, it's a divorce case, right? They have to sell and they're completely getting rid of everything on paper. So that might not be a good option if if you're trying to pitch something creative because the court mandated for everything to be separated or
Right.
sold and they can't have any linkage left, right? So another thing might be probate, right? Someone passed, they get this property and it has a reverse mortgage on it. Obviously, you're not going to want to be able to take that over because reverse mortgages mean that the interest rate, so you're basically paying all interest. Basically.
Right.
It's almost like a hard money loan. So a lot of things that you have to listen for, and some are valid objections. You can't really propose a creative transaction in that scenario. But then if it is a good scenario for creative, and the objection is just the fact that they're scared or they don't understand, there's a difference there, right? So if it's like, well, they just, they don't know exactly what it is, or no, they just want their cash, and you're like, okay, is there a certain reason? Are they purchasing a property afterwards? And they're like, no, this is a second property, or they're going to live with family. So you already know they're objecting because of they're not understanding. They're not objecting because it won't possibly be a solution. So you always have to have like follow-up questions to that to try to get a little bit more information before you can determine that it is something that might work. They just need to know a little bit more. They need to get educated a little bit more.
Right.
Then there's some scenarios where, like you said, Paul, it just won't work, that option, and you just have to keep it moving.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you really have to get good at identifying when it's an opportunity and when it's not, and not being so emotionally attached to that outcome. I mean, if it has anything to do with what you just described, the divorce, the probate, they need to sell to buy another house, then you already know that those probably won't be good opportunities for a creative deal, right? And then you just accept that, and that might not be the opportunity for you or for them, right? So, but you also said something that I think was really, really important, was when you said if you're talking to an agent is going to be wondering how they're going to be paid, how they're going to be compensated, and so anything you come in with as a down payment is going to, obviously some of it's going to go to the seller and some of it's going to go to the agent. I will say though that if the agent isn't going to be able to sell the property and it expires, they're going to make zero. They will make nothing off of that transaction. And so even though they are expecting a commission, if you can come in and offer some creative solutions to what is going on, I mean, even if the agent's walking away with $2,500, $3,500, $5,500 on a deal where they were expecting to make $15,000 or $20,000 in commission, at least they're walking away with something, as opposed to walking away with not getting anything in their pocket because the listing is just going to expire and the seller's just going to say, I'm not going to sell.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. And that's going back to structuring, right? Depending on how the numbers work out, you can even tell, the agent, well, the numbers work out this way, but, what we can do is give you this or be able to at least pay you something better than zero if you don't, sell this property and, kind of I wouldn't say, definitely say you would, you're willing to pay them the commission. But once you get more into the deal and more into structuring, that's kind of where you could have that conversation as to, can it work? And if it can work, this is kind of the number that we need to be at
Got it.
to make it work.
And she's really good at that, you guys. Maria's excellent at that. She is a deal maker. She runs her numbers really, really well. Even when we were having our conversations about our deal and how we were structuring the one that we just closed together. So how did you get so good at learning those numbers, learning those figures? How long did it take? And where can other people learn how to structure these deals the way you're able to do it?
Yeah, so it just takes a lot of repetition. So it takes a lot of like constantly trying to figure out a solution. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. Sometimes you'll have to even think more. Yeah, I know that happened to you on this one, Paul.
Oh,
It's like,
man.
okay, what else? What else can we do, right, to help? Because at the end of the day, I know that's what you were doing. You were trying to help. You were trying to make it work for her. So, but yeah, just trying to always get, your own self creative. And reading helps a lot, to be honest with you, reading books. I think that's why that's the first question you ask, because I feel like reading lets you articulate better. So you read a lot, you articulate more, you communicate better, which then in turn helps you have these kind of conversations with other people. So, I mean, if you don't do anything at all, if you just pick up a book and you read, that helps. But also, like I was telling you before, I follow Pace Morby a lot, and he gives a lot of free content on YouTube as well to kind of get into more of the negotiation stuff or get into the structure of the deal. But at the end of the day, I think that it just, whatever makes financial sense to you is what's gonna work, right? And financial sense to you and a good offer for the seller. Right? So if it's both aligned, then it's kind of going to work. If they're not aligned, it's going to be a very difficult process. So, yeah, I would just say that, just knowing, what you're really getting yourself into, get someone that has more experience if you don't feel comfortable with it, and just, a lot of YouTube content, or get into masterminds, get into groups. Even though you pay for them, you get a lot more value, you get a lot more hand holding, you get a lot more support that way. So that's what I would say.
All right. Well, we've been going at this for a while. I'm going to let Maria give herself a plug. So if you guys need a realtor in Atlanta, Georgia, Maria, why don't you share with him, your information, your contact information, and if anybody has deals that they need help with and they're looking to JV or deals that they want to sell, you can always reach out to Maria. So you want to give yourself a quick plug?
Yeah, yeah. So, I don't know if I could put in the chat here if everyone will see the chat or no. It's just me and you.
Yeah, and using this system, it's just us. Um,
Okay.
but if
But if
you,
not, I'll give my phone number. I'm a huge phone person. I can get on calls. I love to get on calls, text, stuff like that. So my number's 404-858-4203, and I'll repeat it one more time. It's 404-858-4203, or you can find me, on Facebook, Maria Bonilla, and on Instagram at Meet. Meet Bonilla, my last name. So Meet Bonilla, at Me Bonilla is my Instagram stuff. So
awesome.
there you go.
Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate you doing this. We got through that deal. I'm looking forward to a few other deals that we can get going together. So if you guys have any other creative finance deals, Maria performs. She does. She will close. I know that the biggest fear is getting into contract with somebody that doesn't perform or doesn't close. I'm speaking from experience. We just closed our own deal and we got it to the end of the finish line. So keep her in mind as a purchaser and keep her in mind as a realtor if you need any help out in Atlanta, Georgia. All right.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate your time. Thank you for everything, man. We'll talk
Take
soon.
care. Bye.
Bye.